What's that?
I'm doing it for you, not
Well,
showing my
that's
whole
very
self.
kind.
Yeah.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Conflict Resolution October
Oh,
meeting,
you dance.
webinar, Nonviolence in an Unequal World. My name is Jacqueline Frazier, and I am your moderator for today. I trust that you're having a fabulous day, and we thank you for joining us with Conflict Resolution, Minnesota. We welcome all of you. If you don't mind, do a Facebook check-in. Make sure you do your Facebook check-in, click like and share. If you're on Zoom, whether you're making a phone call or not, I just want to say that if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a mute feature and also your stop video feature and participants feature. If you look at the participants feature, you'll see everyone that's on the webinar. In the more section, you have your chat. You go there if you have any questions or anything you would like for us to know, like if someone is muted and they don't know they're muted, send it there. My name is Jacqueline. Like I said, I'm just a few housekeeping rules. If you have background noises or maybe some other distractions, please mute your line. And if you have personal issues that you need to take care of, like going to the restroom, please stop your video so that your personal and private situation can stay personal and private. Please direct all your questions in chat to to Lauren. Actually, Lauren is going to be doing the chat. Direct questions to her. So I want to welcome all of you to Conflict Resolution Minnesota 2020 Annual Conference Webinar Series. In addition to promoting physical health, physical distancing, also add to the vision of our community and require us to work harder to connect in other ways. We have made a decision to do webinars as opposed to the face-to-face situations. As most of you know, we've been dealing with COVID-19 since February 2020. So CRM exists to support those who work with conflict in Minnesota and all our diversity of practices and ways of being. CRM aspires to encourage imaginative ways of healing a divide, which is our main focus with this webinar in all of our communities. We will promote and continue the conversation in this online healing webinar, Healing the Divide webinar series. Let me repeat that because I did mess that up. CRM aspires to encourage imaginative ways of healing the divide in our community. We will promote and continue the conversations in this online Healing the Divide webinar series. Monthly webinars, the series is second Saturday of each month, and our start time is 10 a.m. and ends at 12. This is the Healing the Divide webinar with Anthony Strife, and we are so looking forward to what's going to happen.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I'm going to start by first introducing myself. My name is Anthony. I have been practicing nonviolent communication for better part of 10 years now, it feels like. My introduction to NVC was actually after a major mental health crisis, and I was really transformed by an applied practice of nonviolent communication, not only in my relationship with myself, but also in my relationships with my parents, with my colleagues, and all over the place. I've found NVC to be really helpful. One thing that I want to just name right off the bat is that you're probably not going to come away from today with like a full skill of being able to bring nonviolent communication into your life in the most challenging situations. So think of it like an introduction to weightlifting, in a sense. So don't go trying to lift up 1,500 pounds. Start with something that's most comfortable. I find that a comfortable area to start is internally. So we'll have a video about a self-empathy practice, and we'll do a little bit of that over the course of our day today. I'm also going to just name that I'm very nervous, and that's going to be, I say that both to get it off my chest and also to acknowledge that we're going to be talking about our feelings and emotions today. And so I want to lead by example with that. And I'll get into a little bit more of why it's important to develop emotional literacy and also just fluency with talking about our experiences. So considering that I'm extremely nervous, I find grounding practices to be really nice, ways to cool and calm my nervous system. And so I want to invite everyone to do a grounding practice with me as we start, because our first topic is going to be on the quality of presence that we bring to our relationships and our communications with other people.
Anthony,
yes.
Can we just right off, like right before you get in there, we have a few more things that we need to be, we need to kind of check in with the minister, and then
Okay.
I do a land acknowledgement before we proceed. So it'd
Sure.
be a great point to stop at this point.
Yeah.
Let's invite the minister.
Well, thank you, Anthony, for sharing that bit of information with us. I just want to make sure that in this workshop, people know that participants will be invited to apply an adaptive nonviolent communication framework to power over dynamics in our life from whichever side of the power imbalances they may fall. Activities will be based on participants' lived experiences, will and cultivate mindfulness, distress tolerance, needs consciousness, and interpersonal effectiveness for people on either side of the power difference. Participants can expect supportive coaching for challenging applications. And right now we will go to the Brave Space with Raj. Dr. Raj, you're on.
Hey, thank you all. Thank you. Appreciate, this is a great beginning. I appreciate Anthony jumping in and kind of sharing with us the idea of nonviolence communication, right? So if somebody can give me a host privilege, I am going to just quickly share, but I'm not able to share right now. But while they are working on giving me a host privilege or co-host privilege, I could share a screen on land acknowledgement. Okay, so for right now, just as we are waiting for this to do the land acknowledgement, I want to invite us to be in a space where you are comfortable in coming and listening to this session, not as a person filled with information, but rather as an empty vessel, right? When you come into the space as an empty vessel, I want to invite you to, as Anthony said, ground yourself with using your breathing methodologies that Anthony probably will introduce us to. But let us come into this space ready to listen, to learn, and only then lead, right? Let us take this opportunity to show up as empty vessels, to be filled and be vulnerable, right? This is not just a safe space, but a brave space where we want to invite people to share their perspectives, right? Let us be respectful of each other, but share your perspectives. disagreements are welcome here. And when we realize that our perspective sometimes leads to people's oppression, right? The language we use, the perspectives that we bring might sometimes lead to being the knee on people's backs and knees, right? So I want to invite us to make sure that we know that we are part and parcel of a larger community, that where we are invited to listen and learn from one another. So do I have a screen share capability? I do, right? So I'm gonna just invite us to close our eyes and just gently listen to what I'm about to read, right? And if you will, focus on your breath, center yourself as you breathe in and out, right? Breathe in and out. Land and enslavement acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge that no matter where most of us are currently located in the United States, most of us, spend today and every day on land stolen from indigenous people and cultivated by the enslaved community. It is essential to understand the long-standing history that has brought us to reside and benefit from this land, and to seek to understand our place within the history of genocide, enslavement, settler colonialism, and racism. Land and enslavement acknowledgements do not exist in the past tense or historical context. Settler colonialism and white supremacist ideology is a current, ongoing, and cultural and systemic need. We need to build the mindfulness of our present participation in the placement of the need, right? One way of doing that is to be open, to listen, to learn from each other, right? So we want to invite you to be in this space. I want to hand the space to the minister. Thank you all. The minister, you are on mute. Okay, there they are.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you, Raj. So now I would like to share with you our presenter for this morning. Anthony Strife is an educator, student, coach, artist, performer, and storyteller who delights in drawing connections between ideas and cultivating connections between people. Anthony has a master's degree in organizational leadership, a bachelor's degree in international leadership for social change, and he is presently working on a master's degree in conflict resolution. And we have him here presenting with us, and I am so grateful to have the opportunity to listen to this wonderful presenter. Anthony has studied and practiced nonviolent communication for more than 8 years, as was shared with us earlier this morning, and actively integrated the theory and practices of nonviolent communication with other leadership and personal development practices, including dialectical behavior therapy. Thank you, Anthony, for giving me that word to say. I really appreciate you playing with my tongue this morning. Anthony is a long, can you pronounce that word? Is it Tolkien?
Tolkien, yes.
Okay, Anthony is a lifelong Tolkien nerd, and Sailor Moon is still his favorite superhero. I present to you all our presenter for this morning, Anthony Strife. thank you, Anthony, for showing up this morning.
Yes. Thank you. That's when I would normally expect roaring applause and all kinds of things, but we'll
Okay, unmute yourself and applause.
Oh, no, no, no. I'm
Come on, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, Anthony.
That makes me feel less nervous, so that is helping.
I didn't see our president Brenda clap, so can Brenda herself clap? Can you?
I was the first one to clap, Rob. Thank you very much. Turn your camera on.
He just called you out. He called you out.
Lord.
Turn your camera on.
As long as we keep it nonviolent, I'm okay with the communication.
I don't know.
And we'll play with our violent communication styles too, because that's actually kind of a good segue into addressing a bit of what nonviolent communication is and what it isn't. So thank you, Raj, especially for that that land acknowledgement and acknowledgement of the broader context of our social positioning that we all have. And because that is really a key thing that in a lot of ways NVC sometimes misses, but there's a development in the community of acknowledging broader context and power dynamic and historical oppression and violence as a key part of how people interpret things, and also how power transforms conflict and can make it very difficult for people to engage with. So one of the things that NVC is not, but is a common pitfall, and one of the things that I fell into when I first started studying NVC was thinking that it was just a nice way to manipulate people into doing what I wanted. And I don't know if anybody else has had experience with learning different kinds of conflict resolution styles or modes or whatever. But one of the central pieces of nonviolent communication is about intentionality and choosing curiosity and care as an intention, as opposed to control and domination. And so where I think this is particularly relevant for people in positions of power, right? Who have access to privilege, and privilege being defined as unearned benefit, unearned social power and capital. And so for folks that fall into that category, of which I am one, I'm a white dude, and is when we are listening to the experiences or watching the experiences and expressions of people who are on the other side of that privilege, our responsibility and the most power that we actually have in those situations, or the best kind of power that we have in those situations, is to listen with the intention to understand. And I like to describe that as listening for the song beneath the words. That's a Heifetz thing. You're listening for what is going on, what are the needs and the feelings that this person is trying to express, and how can I always listen for the pleas, as opposed to hearing and taking personally whatever judgments I think that they might be having of me, or judgments that I might be having of myself. How can I hold myself and them with care and consideration, and get really curious about what is going on for them? And for those of us who also exist on the other side of that oppression dichotomy, right? I'm also a queer gay man, so there's aspects of which I experience different forms of oppression and discrimination myself. a big part of what I find valuable about NVC in that way is its power to give me an opportunity to practice self-empathy and care for myself when nobody else seems to care about my needs. So a little story. I have worked for the past 3 years as a substitute teacher in St. Paul public schools, charter schools, and all over. And nearly without fail, every time that I go into a new classroom, I get the question, are you a boy or a girl? So you sound like a girl. And that can be really, really invalidating, because I've also gotten that those kinds of responses over the phone from banks and places that are like, I'm sorry, I can't release this information to you because I think you're not actually Anthony. I think you might be Anthony's mother or whatever. So one of the key practices for me in situations like that is self-empathy, where my goal is to just be gentle and considerate about my needs so that I can show up without like yelling at them or getting defensive or I don't know. There are a million different ways that I could show up in those situations that would damage the relationship that I have with this person, even if it's just a customer service person. I want to respect their humanity, even when they're having a hard time respecting mine. And sometimes that goes well and sometimes it doesn't. But so I want to just go really quickly into a discussion. And this would be a good place for the pairs to get sorted out. But the first thing that I want to practice is for each pair, you're going to spend a little bit of time just doing presence-based listening. And what I mean by that is the other person's going to tell a story, and your job is just to sit and listen and don't respond at all. And we're going to do it because I want to then kind of add on to that and build on that. And over the course of the workshop, you'll be working with the same person. So you'll have an opportunity to kind of dig a little bit deeper on this. And the story is, tell the story of a time when you experienced having less power than someone else. So again, tell the story of a time when you had less power than someone else. What happened? What was that like for you? And we will start there. Keep in mind that if you are the storyteller, go with unvarnished as best you can, right? Like tell it how it is, tell it exactly how it is in your mind, and we will work on doing some feelings and needs practice. So some empathy practice, some self-empathy, as well as empathy for other people around this story that you're telling. So
Anthony,
with that,
just to clarify, you just want us to listen to the person's story and do not respond. And then does the other person then tell their story and have that person listen or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. Thank you. And I think we'll do.
Anthony, how long do we have?
I was just about to do a quick calculation. Let's do about 3 minutes per person. Or does that sound too much?
No, that sounds good, I think.
Good? Okay, so 3 minutes per person. we'll send a notice when the 3 minutes are coming close to up, and then when the 6 minutes are close to up. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Is there only one person in group 2, in breakout room 2?
No, it should be Andy.
And me, and I'm not going to go into a room, right?
Correct.
So
Can you redo the rooms because there's like 6 or 7 people in each room?
Well, I did automatically too.
Yeah, but you probably put like 2. You put the 2 like as in 2
how many rooms?
something instead of 2 people per room. So you
Oh,
got to do math. If there's 22 people, then it'd be like
10 rooms.
11 rooms.
Okay.
So if you want to just close the rooms, bring them back, just tell them what happened, and then send them back again. But you'll have to do it soon before they get into it.
Yeah, I'm doing it now.
We are all back.
Yes, you're all
Yes.
back because I have to redo the rooms. So I didn't want you to get into a session, so I'm going to redo it. Sorry about that, guys. I have to recreate the room, so give me a second here.
People are still coming back. It'll be about 30 seconds or so before you get everybody.
No, it'll be 41 seconds.
Anthony, as she's recreating, can you say the question again? Because I went to the chat and I didn't see it in there.
Sure,
So,
we will also send it. I'll send the this in an announcement. But essentially, so if you're listening, your job is to just listen and like focus on them. Don't be on your phone, whatever. And if you are speaking, your job is going to be to tell the story of a time when you experienced having less power than someone else. What happened and what was that like for you? And you'll have 3 minutes each.
all right.
All righty, here we go.
Okay, it looks like there are 4 people here.
Why is it 4 people?
In this, if you're still here, then you
You can
haven't
go into
gone
your
into your
phone.
group.
Okay.
See, Nicole, somehow all the rooms are closing and everybody will be back in 30 seconds. As soon as I got in there, there was the countdown timer. It had already started.
Oh, what the world?
So
So I need to recreate and do all the rooms again?
you don't have to recreate it. It'll be all the right rooms. It's just that for some reason you've closed the rooms.
The timer might have been set for a very
Oh,
short
the
amount
first
of
time? Sorry, everyone. The timer, I think, was already set.
So Nicole, in the breakout rooms box at the bottom, there's a drop down with options, and check and see if it says anything about closing the rooms automatically after a certain amount of time. Just cancel
Cool.
that.
All
Hey
right, so
everybody,
this-
let's give it up for Nicole, who's doing the breakout rooms for the first time today. Woo!
Thank you, Nicole. Hang in there. No worries.
You got this, Nicole.
Go ahead.
Alrighty, so let's try this again. Oh, no. I might have did it wrong again. I don't know. I might have done it wrong again.
Are people coming back?
Why are they coming back? Lauren, you're gonna have to do it. Sorry.
Good try, Nicole.
No worries, Nicole.
I have an alternative.
No, I'll let Lauren, I'll give it to you to do it.
Okie doke.
Okay.
Well, hopefully that story is percolating strongly in everybody's
Right,
mind now. You're gonna be good to go.
So
Right.
one more suggestion.
Oh yeah, here we've got it. It was, they were. Okay, I think I might have fixed it. Hopefully, cross your fingers.
So as you go, make sure that part of unvarnished is like, let yourself be judgmental. Like, do not worry about like, oh, am I being violent in my communication? Just let it go, and let yourself say it how you want to say it. And that's all I got to add.
Okay, ready to try it? Third time's the charm?
Third time's the charm.
Okay, here we go.
I think I got put into a room, and I'm gonna stay out. But somebody wants.
Yeah, I will take that person and put them elsewhere.
Okay.
But first, I'm gonna send this question. Tell a story of a time you experience having less power than someone else. What? And then you said what happened. What was that like for you? Okay, I'm broadcasting that to everybody. And now I'm gonna go sort out who, oh, that was just Lori. We got lucky.
Okay.
So,
And Lori, you didn't want to be in a room?
oh, okay. Well, she'll come back and Julie has nobody. So Nicole, how do you feel about going and talking with Julie?
Sure.
And I'm gonna give the boxes back to you when you get back, Nicole, the breakouts, because I think I fixed it. So I think you can do it now. It was a setting thing.
Oh, it was the timing? The time?
I'll show it to you another time, but I think it's fixed now. But I'm gonna put you in a room with Julie so you can do the thing.
Okay, and when I do the breakout, do I close all rooms? Do I hit that button?
I'm gonna close them and bring
Okay.
everybody back, but after that I'll make you host again.
All right.
Lauren, you need
Yeah.
to put Julie and Andy together. They're both in a room by themselves.
Yeah, I know. I'm working on it.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I just got out of the room.
Yeah.
My room.
And I'll set a timer here for 3 minutes. Then we can send, hold on. For 2 minutes and 30
Julie
seconds.
has joined Andy's room. Everybody else looks paired up. Nicole, you don't have to, there's no one for you to talk to now because we've got Julie and Andy together.
Okay.
So Nicole, then I'm gonna make you host now since you didn't go anywhere. And then, yeah, so you'll just close it when you're ready, not whenever Anthony tells you to close the room is when you'll close it.
Okay.
And then you'll just hit open all rooms when Anthony tells you to, and it'll all go back to the same room.
Okay.
Okay, can you please make me co-host as soon as you become host? There you go.
And so now my breakout room popped up.
Uh-huh.
I don't close our rooms until he tells me, right? For Anthony?
Right.
Okay.
You got this. It was the setting thing that I'll show you next time we meet.
Okay.
How are you feeling, Anthony?
Good. I'm just trying to decide if this other video that I have is, if I'd be better switching out something else, just on account of time.
I just want to say you're doing a great job, and we're so happy to have you here.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're doing really good.
Thank you.
Better than myself.
Well, I was at like almost feeling physically ill this morning with how nervous I was. So I'm glad to just kind of be in it and like letting it happen as it is, as opposed to fussing over.
Yeah, fussing over it, and yeah, like get it out the way.
I'm gonna pause the recording just for right now, and then I'll start it again when people come back.
All right.
Story. You are all going to start guessing at the feelings and needs that they might have been experiencing in their story. Does that make sense? So I'm going to share a document. Nicole, these are the two documents that the handouts did those get sent out to folks?
Yes.
Okay,
We're
because I can
gonna
also
drop it in the chat, I believe.
Yep, I'll put the links to them in the chat box as well, because that will probably be the easiest way for everyone to participate. And there's a PDF that you can download from the site. Otherwise, you can just look at it right on the site here. So in the chat, what I would like everyone to do is name some of the feelings that just like Julie is doing, some of the feelings that they noticed being raised in their in the story that they were listening to. And once you've done that, and take some time and actually really look over the feelings inventory that I've shared with you. There's two separate sections. There's a section for feelings when your needs are satisfied, which may have been some of the feelings that people were having. But in my experience of having been in a position of less power, I tend to be more in the section where the feelings that I'm having are because my needs are not satisfied. So take a look in both sections just to see if there's anything that might have come up. And then once you've done that, look at the needs inventory. And the needs inventory we'll talk a little bit more about here in a little bit, but these are going to be universal human needs. It's kind of the life energy piece that's underneath emotions. And we are going to do a little bit of play around what those look like when they're met and when they're not met. So that. So I'm seeing some really, really good ones. I'm also noticing a couple that I would classify more accurately as what's called a thought or judgment masquerading as a feeling. Sometimes our thoughts like to put on a show to get us to take them more seriously. And so one of the things that I'm noticing, like let's take manipulated as an example, right? The idea that that I feel manipulated, if I think about that situation, what I notice is that I might be having a thought, or I believe that I'm being manipulated, and it might be true or not, right? Like that, whether or not that thought is accurate is a totally different question than whether or not it is really accurately described as a sensation that I'm having in my body. And the thought that I'm being manipulated can definitely bring up all kinds of sensations in me, right? So I'm wondering if anybody has a feeling that they would connect to being manipulated. If I'm thinking that I'm being manipulated, whether or not that's the case, whether or not that's true is kind of irrelevant. What might I be feeling in that situation? You can unmute yourself and
Furious?
Furious, I like that one. I get furious if I think I'm being manipulated.
Betrayed?
Betrayed is another good one, or it's another one of those masquerading thoughts. You betrayed me. And I have a video on blame and how that's the purpose and value of that. But yes, I would put betrayed in the category more of like an evaluation or a judgment of something that somebody has done rather than an emotion that I have. But even in the situation of like thinking that I've been betrayed, what felt sense might I have in my body? So part of my purpose in doing this is to try to kind of tease out and pull apart the thoughts that we're having about something or about someone and the emotions that we are actually having in our body, so that we can be aware of and conscious of the thoughts that we're having. Because I don't want anybody to think what I'm saying is, oh, that's a thought or that's a judgment, throw that away. It doesn't matter. That's not my point. My point is kind of hold a judgment and a thought like it's an interesting glass object. You want to look at it and like examine it and see what the feelings are that are attached to it and what needs you have that are kind of pushing that thought to the surface of your mind, so that you can understand what those things are and act from those things. Because often when we act just from the judgment and evaluation, we're going to have a really, really difficult time expressing what is deeply important to us rather than just expressing what we think is wrong with the other person. And this can also happen in our internal situation, in our internal conflicts. When I have a judgment or a thought about myself, often the strategy that I use to try to fix that is criticism and shame and just like beating myself up over this thing that if I were to think, okay, so I'm having this judgment of myself of being really lazy. And instead of just like hounding at that judgment about myself and hoping that that will fix my laziness, I can say, okay, what is that really about? Like, what needs am I meeting by doing the thing that I'm doing right now? And what needs are not being met by doing that? And how am I feeling about both of those things? So does anybody have a guess as to some of the needs that are that were alive in people in your story?
To be heard.
Yeah. And what was the feeling that came from that, do you think? I think you said furious, right?
To be heard.
Yeah.
To be heard.
Yeah. But what was the feeling that you had connected to that one?
I was connecting because she was kept reiterating or repeating the story to me.
Okay.
I would say, are you talking about from the story we heard or the story we told?
The story you heard or the story you told. It's really up to you.
Well, the story that I heard, I felt like there was some embarrassment and maybe shame behind the experience that they had. And you know, like you said, that powerlessness where you have no other options, almost like entrapment, you know, like like you can't do anything about it. And that came through in the story that I told as well, as that, you know, like your hands are tied. And I was thinking about when you were talking about the manipulated word, is, I don't know if this is an emotion word, but sometimes you feel invisible, like you just want to let the manipulation or let the thing play out and you just sit back and watch it happen, right? So in some ways, I feel like it renders you like almost just invisible, like the person is doing their plan or their plot and you just let it happen.
Yeah, I would definitely say that I can feel invisible sometimes. And feeling powerless, and I was also thinking of the word desperate, like feeling just desperate, or like I don't know. There's so many that could come up in that. So but yeah, being seen, being heard, needs to matter are also really up, especially in those situations where we don't have power, or we have less power, or what power we do have, we don't really have access to. It can get really intense. So thank you. Anyone else? Needs that you've noticed in the story?
For me, I would say the word I would use is somewhat baffled.
I felt that one. And what need do you think was up around that? Like, why do you think that they felt baffled?
Because it was almost how dare you situation. What was required for them to do, the requirement was met, but it wasn't necessarily acknowledged.
Okay, so I'm looking at the needs inventory, and I'm wondering if you think there might have been a need for understanding, like I need to understand myself, but also for respect.
I definitely would say respect. Definitely.
So thank you for that one too. I desperately wish that I could have been able to hear all of the stories, but just as a matter of time, and because I don't have 1,000 ears, I leave it to you all to be listening for those things. Anyone else have another question? I'm going to pivot real quick. How do you feel now that you've spent some time listening to someone else's story and presumably being heard tell your story, and what need for you is well met in this moment?
I would say empathy.
Need for empathy?
And connection, care.
And how do you feel because that need is well met?
I feel good, like they're listening.
So maybe, let's see. Or I'll share my screen because I'm looking at the feelings inventory, so we can look at that together.
And I will say, I felt more validated.
Mm-hmm.
The word that comes to my mind is awareness. Awareness in being mindful of how we listen to other people, whether it's judgmental or non-judgmental, and also the nonverbal communication that's also rendered when you hear a story. Because I don't think it's always in what a person say, but sometimes their language, what they don't say with their body says a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that we, with this first iteration, I would want to have responded, and I couldn't respond with empathy. What I needed to do was just acknowledge by not saying anything. There was clearly body language on my part that said, yes, I'm listening to you, but not being able to summarize or paraphrase or ask them questions to explore further. I felt I didn't get a full chance to really listen. I just got to start to listen, but I felt like I could do a lot more if I could participate more by not me telling them what I thought, but asking them more about what they were thinking.
I would add by telling the story, I think there was a sense of relief that, you know, it was an opportunity to share an unpleasant story.
And what need did you experience, like having been met with that relief?
I think that would be maybe the foremost piece of it, that somebody was there to listen and not judge.
For my experience, the person sharing a story that seemed so similar to mine was kind of like an affirmation of them listening to me, because they were basically repeating an experience that seemed pretty darn similar to what my internal experience was, and so I felt affirmed by that.
Okay, I'm going to pull up. Thank you, everybody, for sharing those things. I want to just continue to validate that it's important to not only be able and willing to share our experiences of having less power than other people, because honestly, they need to know in a lot of these situations how powerlessness is affecting us, and also we deserve to take care of ourselves and to be heard about those situations, because we don't have, as a society, a culture of raising those things regularly and being vulnerable and having that vulnerability met with compassion and empathy and respect and listening. So I want to just thank you all for being willing to do that. or for pushing through it if it wasn't something that you were exactly comfortable with. So I'm gonna pull up this. We're just gonna listen to this first part. I don't wanna have a 10-minute video here, but this is Marshall Rosenberg, who is the guy that kind of developed the nonviolent communication process, talking about an experience that he had going into a situation with folks who experienced a lot less power than he did, and experienced a lot of pain as a result of American policy. So I'm gonna share that with you. We'll just watch about maybe 5 minutes of this.
In your 40 years of mediating conflicts between warring factions around the world, what's the most important thing that you do that creates peace between the people involved?
First, I never hear what they think. See, I get called a lot of names by people who hear what I'm saying. I see you've read my book. You probably can recall I was in a refugee camp in Palestinian Authority, and what all the crowd had to do was hear from my interpreter that I was an American, and a gentleman jumps up and screams at me, murderer, and another one jumps up, assassin, and another one calls child killer. Within an hour, the guy that called me a murderer invites me to a Ramadan dinner at his house. I didn't hear what he thought of me. I connected to what he was feeling, what he was needing. As I walked into that refugee camp, there were hundreds of tear gas grenades all over the lawn, shot in the night before when they had a riot there. And on the side of each of the grenades was written, "Made in USA." So when this guy calls me murderer, hearing that I'm an American, I tried to hear, what is the guy feeling? And I said, "Sir, are you furious?" And then I tried to hear his needs. "Are you needing a different kind of support from my country than you're getting?" And he looks at me in a kind of a stunned way. Apparently that's not the way people respond to him usually when he screams at them. He said, "You're damn right. We don't have sewage. We don't have housing. Why are you sending these weapons?" So I said, "Well, then that makes it clear why you'd be so aggravated. If you don't have these basics and you get these weapons sent over here, I can see that your needs are for some other kind of support." He said, "Do you know what it's like to live under these conditions for all these years?" I said, "So you'd like me to understand just how desperate it can be even for one day, let alone for many years." So I heard what was alive in the guy, not what he thought I was, a murderer. I didn't say I ain't killed anybody. I tried to hear what was going on in him. And when he trusted that I sincerely cared what he was feeling, what he was needing, he could start to hear me then when I said, "Look, I'm frustrated right now because I came a long way to be here. I want to offer something. And I'm worried now that because you got me labeled as an American, you ain't going to listen to me." He said, "What do you want to say to us?" So he could hear me then. And incidentally, we have a school there now, one of the schools that we call a nonviolent communication school in that refugee camp. And whenever I go to that region, I'm well received hospitably in that refugee camp. But I had to see the human being behind the names that he was calling me.
All right. So I would love to get some folks' responses to that story that Dr. Rosenberg told. See if it reminds you of anything that you've experienced here in the United States, or if you've traveled internationally or anything like that. It reminds me of a lot of things. So yeah, just go ahead and unmute yourself if you want to talk, or maybe we could do raising hands. I just don't want people to be interrupted.
I would say It reminded me of George Floyd incident.
Mm.
And I was on a Zoom call with a bunch of people.
Mm.
And I think it maybe about 3 or 4 African American, and the rest were white. And I gave my view of what I saw on camera. And my view was that him kneeling on George Floyd, I did not see it as an intent to kill. I saw it from his perspective of a bunch of people coming at him yelling and then just freezing in that moment. And that him getting his knee off his neck, he was froze because he had people from behind him, in front of him, beside him. And so in that moment, he just froze. That's what came to me, came to my spirit. And the other person said something was another African American woman, and she said, "I can't believe you saw that. You got to be kidding me." And we all on the Zoom call like froze.
Mm-hmm.
And then we switched and we started talking about something else, but she could not let it go. So in the chat box, she chatted me the whole time until I finally said, "We're here to learn something different here." And I gave her my telephone number and I said, "And we can talk if you would like." So that was my experience.
Thanks, Nicole.
Well, I think there are so many examples of, you know, of hearing and not hearing, and some of those words. I mean, even our current political situation, the last 2 debates.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's so many things where we can't hear people, or we can't see the need behind, you know, the person's words, where we don't go any farther with our communication. So I guess I'll just say our political situation, even the 2 parties and how they're duking it out, you know, the debates that just happened. It's like, you know, we get tunnel vision, we get stuck on one thing and we can't hear anything else. Even racial things that are going on in our country. It's like we see one thing and we can't see anything beyond that. Beyond that, you're not a person, right? So I think there's so many opportunities to see humanity, you know, dropping the titles. We do circles. I'm a circle keeper, so we do circles all over the city. And it's so hard sometimes for people just to get past even the word criminal, or, you know, if you've been charged with something, they just see you as a criminal. They don't see you as a person who has needs. They don't see, you know, even young people. I think my generation looks at people, you know, the millennials and the Generation X and Y and Z. We look at them and we just say, you know, people say it's crazy. They don't think that those young people are trying to tell us something or say something to us. They don't think that they have needs. They really don't. They're like, you know, just get up, you know, get a job, pull up your pants, you know, that kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
You've heard it before. So,
oh, yeah.
So I think all of those are examples of just what that guy was saying, you know, we don't see past. And that's why we can't have conversations and come to resolution, right?
Thanks, Linda.
Is there a reason why you bought so many bananas? Is there a reason why you bought so many bananas?
Potassium.
All right. And then can we get one more response of what did that remind you of? What came up for you when you heard him tell that story?
I could share something.
Sure.
So we raise our first granddaughter, who is 10 and has a neurological disorder. And one of her strategies when frustrated is name calling. And I have definitely not always responded elegantly to that, let's say. And so the situation that was described reminded me of that. I know in my head that when she's name calling or other outburst behaviors, it's a way to try and communicate something that she's not sure how to do that. But sometimes I don't use my best skills in reacting. Just thought of it.
I have 100% been there. I know how that goes. Being a substitute teacher, I get called lots of names. And sometimes I'm just like, you know what, go to the principal's office. I don't want anything to do with you right now. But when I'm feeling resourced and like able to stay in connection with my own needs and be present, I can actually respond a lot differently. And I don't feel like I have to be on the defensive or like push back against that. I can hear the things that they're saying without attaching myself to them, and hear it as a, please help me meet my needs, even as they can say it as poorly and as violently as they have a mind to. And where I have power is how I take that and what I do with that. And so I mentioned using or thinking about judgments, and name calling would be a form of judgment, right? It's when somebody's expressing like how much they are blaming you essentially for the thing that is going on for them. And so thinking about judgments as a fragile, interesting glass object, you don't want to eat it, right? You're not going to put it in your mouth to get a sense of what this glass object is, right? And you're not going to bite down on it, chew on it, swallow it. Bad ideas all around, because it's going to cut you up inside. You're going to get stuck with those shards, and you don't want to do that. So instead, and you also don't want to throw it at them, throw it back at them, right? Or throw it on the ground. You don't want to break it. You want to understand it and see it clearly for what it is. And all it is a strategy for them to attempt to meet their needs, even sometimes at the expense of yours, right? Julie, how is that landing on you?
I'm actually noting that image. I love that image. It's a great image because you don't want to take it in and you don't want to toss it out either way, right? Yes. Yep. So I think that's wonderful. And I agree with your idea that sometimes I do have the resource and ability to completely remain calm and just try to validate her feelings and learn more about her feelings. I am, you know, human and not perfect. So I definitely have had times when I've thrown it with just at her something, you know, but, and I definitely take it in as, oh, I'm a bad parent sometimes. So I love the image. Thank you.
Yeah. That's actually a really good segue into a video from a woman in, I believe she's in the Netherlands. And her YouTube channel is called Cup of Empathy. And she talks about, oh gosh, where did I put it? Here it is. Start here. It's a daily 5-minute nonviolent communication practice that can be used kind of proactively as your internal weight or your weightlifting practice, so that when those big situations come up, and this can be parent-child things. This can be when somebody is expressing something that you like deeply disagree with, or that feels invalidating, or for people, especially for people in positions of more privilege, I think it's important to remain present and not get defensive when somebody is either calling us out or calling our systemic reality out in terms of like being racist or those kinds of things, to be able to hear and actively listen for the needs that are underlying all of those things. And for those of us in positions with less power, to actively cultivate a practice of self-empathy, because we live in a society where honestly our needs matter less, right? Because based on those identities and based on other people's judgments and other people's strategies. So I'm going to share this video. I can also share the link with you if you would like to watch it again later. So go ahead and do that now.
If you read a book about NVC and you have trouble to put it into practice, or maybe you've done a course on NVC but already a while ago and you notice you're going to fall back into old habits, this video is for you. We're going to create a daily NVC practice. Because NVC is in a way just like, you know, any new habit, sports or meditation. If you stop doing it, you lose the muscle, you lose the habit. So I'm going to help you to have this daily practice. It's going to be a 5-minute guided self-empathy. You're going to practice, you know, expressing honestly and listening empathically, but to yourself, because that's the most easy thing to do every day. But then for the rest of the day, it's much easier to put it into practice with other people. And also it's going to work as kind of like an emotional hygiene, because every day you're going to do this and it will prevent things from piling up and, you know, exploding later. If in this moment you're very upset or in very strong emotions, I would recommend a different video. I'm going to put the link up here. And other than that, if that's not the case, then let's get started. Grab a pen and a piece of paper or something else you can write on, and make sure you have kind of a comfortable seat, and then we can start.
Feel free to
So our first step is our feeling in this moment. So maybe you'd like to close your eyes for a second and just check your body, especially your core. And maybe also your shoulders and your throat, your chest. What do you feel? And then open your eyes and check the feeling list. Just check if the feeling is on the list, because sometimes we have something that sounds like a feeling, but it's actually a thought. Like, for example, I feel ignored. That's not a feeling. It's a pseudo feeling. It's actually a thought. So check your feeling on the list and write it down. And after you wrote it down, maybe you have several feelings, so write them all down. You're just going to close your eyes again and just feel it again, just for 2 breaths. Okay, then we're going to move to step 2, which is your thoughts. So as you may know, feelings are created by your thoughts. So now we're going to see which thoughts created your feelings. So for each feeling, there's a thought. And my tip for this one is to be really uncensored. You know, we've learned to be nice, but maybe your thought is like, you know, my boyfriend is such an asshole. He's an egoist, or he likes that girl more than me, or my boss is manipulative, or my mom is whining so much. You know, anything. This is the moment to be really free, to really give space to any thoughts. We're not gonna put them away. It's not healthy, in my belief. So write them down, each of them, and connect them with the right feeling. So write the thought next to the feeling that belongs to it. So step 3. Any thought you have is linked to an event in real life. So maybe you know this already. This is called the observation, the writing down of what happened. And we're going to do this without any judgment. It's going to be completely neutral. If you don't know how to do this, if you haven't done this before, I would recommend watching a more in-depth video. I will have a link again about this. And if you just want to try it right now, that's fine as well. Just try to write down what is it that mostly someone else said or did that triggered this thought in you. Write it down as short as you can. And also make sure that, you know, each thought is again linked to one event. Now we're going to move to step 4, and this is really the most essential and the most joyful step, I would say. We're going to see if we can find your need. So behind each thought that you wrote down is a need. So check the card that I'm going to show you and try to find your need.
I'll pause it here for a second for folks.
anything that really speaks to you. And if you're short in time, just pick one thought and find one need. And once you find your need, you wrote it down, then I want you to close your eyes again and kind of connect with this need. Like, do you really see the beauty of this need? This is really the step of seeing yourself as beautiful, as human. Just any thought you have, any feeling, it's like super human thing. So our last step, step 5, and this is an optional step. This is finding your request. So if you have a certain need that is not met, you just discovered it, it might be that you want to take a step to fulfill this need. And my tip would be to make it very concrete. So if you tell yourself, okay, I'm gonna stand up more for myself with my brother. That's not concrete and specific enough. So what would be specific is like, next time my brother asks me to do something and I don't feel like doing it, I'm gonna say no. And I'm going to explain why. That will be a concrete and specific way to make a request for yourself. And obviously you can also make a request to someone else. So if you would like to make a request, look at your need and try to come up with a request. So now you completed the 5 steps. Close your eyes one more time and just check how you feel. Maybe it's exactly the same as when you started. That's okay. Maybe something shifted. And then check if there's any gratitude towards yourself taking this time for you. Open your eyes again. And now you fully completed your 5 minutes a day practice. I'm happy for you. And do this every day. Then you're really going to grow in your MVC, I'm sure. So last but not least, if you don't have this feeling and need sheet that you saw, go to my website and leave your email address and I will send it to you for free. So you can print it out, take it with you, do this exercise anywhere. And last but not least, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you enjoy these videos, you'll get updates when there's a new one. If you have any questions, comments,
All right. So how was that?
I enjoyed it.
I thought it was great.
Shifted? Can you say more about that, Brenda?
Well, for one thing, it's like sometimes you get caught up in your feelings and you just want to sit there and you don't do anything about it. It gives you action steps to actually write it down. What do I want? To ask for what you want. And it really gives you your power back because emotions can take you over, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, I like that it doesn't let you get stuck in that emotion or stuck with that thing that you feel. So I can think of lots of situations where this would be like so helpful and so empowering, like in those situations that we felt powerless to, like just to ask for what we need, to identify what we need. Because sometimes it's like if somebody was ready to write you a check, you wouldn't even know what you needed. You know what I mean? What you want or whatever. I mean, I know that I want a red Mercedes convertible, but you know, some people may not know that if they come into tons of money.
And also like kind of what requests can you then make of yourself to get yourself, like if that's your long-term goal is this red Mercedes, like how can I move in that direction? What requests can I make of myself and other people to really be effective in getting that, you know?
Like the lottery, you know.
Effective, I said. Thank you, Brenda. Did anybody else have something come up that they want to share? So I'm noticing that it's about 11:28, and I think we wanted to also have time for like Q&A and to do any kind of wrap-ups. So I just want to make sure that we're good on time.
And I like the fact that you go through all the 4 steps, but at the end you do a request. request of your stuff or a request that from someone else, it kind of remind me of my mother's rule. Yep, I'll let you pop for a little while, but now it's time to get up and move on. What's next? What needs to happen to move you forward, to keep you going?
Yeah.
So I like that, the request part.
One of the things that impressed me about Marshall is he always, instead of responding defensively, he always seemed to be able to articulate with clarity what the other person was feeling or experiencing. And it seems to me that this 5-minute video is a way of kind of like coaching ourselves along to start to develop the skill to do that, as opposed to the ignorance that at least I currently have in that respect.
Thank you. Yeah, one of my early hang-ups or sources of frustration in my practice of NVC was I had this fixation on guessing right. I always had to guess correctly what the other person was doing, and it was an achievement thing for me rather than a connection thing. So that's kind of, it kind of circles back to that idea of paying attention to our intention. Like, what is it that I'm really wanting to do here? If I'm listening to someone, am I listening to be right, even in my guess about what they're feeling and needing? Or am I listening with the intention of connecting and actually being really curious about them? Because then I can guess completely off the wall things with that intention of curiosity. And I give them the opportunity to say, no, but it's not really that, it's something else. It's this actually. And I can do that with myself. I can guess wrong on purpose. One of the things that Marshall has also said is anything really worth doing is worth doing poorly. So it's more about like, am I willing to guess and like be curious about you, even if I'm guessing completely wrong.
Something that I read somewhere along the lines, and I don't remember where I read it, but as a mediator, I need something kind of simple for myself. And there's a model that it's just, the letters are NIP, NIP. And N is notice feelings. And then I is investigate further. And then P is problem solve together. So I'm not necessarily good at doing this all the time in my own personal life and with others, just as Julie talked about with her granddaughter. There's times I wish I could be better at this in other situations. But at least when I go into a mediation, I center myself first, and then just picking up on these 5 steps: feelings, thoughts, observations, needs, and your request. I'm just simplifying that myself a little bit with the NIP model: notice feelings, investigate further, and then problem solve together, and make it a we on the problem solving. That goes a long way towards helping me in that process. So I'm just tossing that out as something to think about.
Thank you.
I also like how the model helps you, the feeling, thought, observation, need, helps you separate feeling and thought. Because I think that we in our society often, and I'm certainly guilty of it periodically myself, often label a thought as a feeling. So I think it's good that it separates those for us, and we can really clearly be clear about how we're feeling actually, and really what the thought is, and then the observation or trigger or whatever that led to that. So.
One really helpful shorthand that I've been taught for recognizing when you have a thought masquerading as a feeling is if you can say, I feel like, or I feel that, such and such and such, it's probably a thought masquerading as a feeling. It's probably a thought pretending to be a feeling. So like, for example, I feel like you control me, or like you are controlling me. I can separate those things out, or I feel that you are manipulating me. So there's ways to kind of pull those things apart. And like she said in the video, the goal is not elimination of judgment, because judgment is actually really life-serving when it is held like a glass object, right? When you are able to see it for what it is, rather than mistaking it for the truth, capital T truth, then you can see that it's just a signpost pointing at your needs. That's all it is. And you can kind of look at it and be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna try and get curious about it. I don't need to latch onto it. I don't need to throw it away. I can just look at it and be like, all right, what's this about? What is this really about? And what can I do about it? And what can't, like, where don't I have power in it? And if I don't have power to do something external about it, I have internal power. I can give myself empathy. I can choose to grieve for that, because I think a lot of us, myself, watching the things that are going on in our society, it can feel paralyzing until I actually allow myself the opportunity to grieve and just like be sad, or feel whatever thing it is that is being brought up for me, and then move forward with an understanding and a focus on my needs, because that's the kind of key thing, is pulling our attention back to our needs individually and also the needs that exist in all of the people around us.
And when you say, Anthony, it's almost like when you learn in an argument, let's say a married couple, and they teach you in marriage class that when you argue and say, oh, you make me sick because you never take out the garbage. They say, instead of saying that, you say, what I feel when you don't take out the garbage, my kitchen stinks. So kind of that same concept of when you're struggling or in a situation, refer to your need, what you're needing at that moment, and if that need is met, great. But what is frustrating when that need is not met, this is how I'm feeling, versus going back and forth, name calling and resentment and saying some things that you regret you said.
And I want to also make sure that I stress, because I didn't go through the like steps of NVC myself, but she did a really wonderful job of that. And I want to stress the importance, as I understand it, of making requests, and especially making specific requests as a follow-up to that feelings and needs practice. Because when we just express our feelings and needs to somebody about something that they've done or that we think that they've done, it can come across to them as blame. And so it can be more disconnecting to not then have, like, what is the thing that I want? And what would help to make this better for me? Than to just say, well, when I see that you don't take out the garbage, I feel frustrated and disgusted because I have a need for order or whatever. And then just leaving it there, because how that is likely to land on someone is, oh, you think it's my fault that you feel this way, as opposed to then kind of creating an openness, because a request is very much something that you're willing to hear no to. So even if, like, you say, would you take out the garbage, and or whatever, and then they can come back with a no, and then you're in a negotiation, then at that point it's okay, so they're having a feeling and a need that this strategy, this request that I've made, doesn't work for them, at least not right now. And so what I can do is I can get curious about that in them. I can also continue to track, like, oh, now they've said no to me and I'm feeling frustrated and I'm having these other judgments about them. and thoughts about like, oh, you're just lazy or whatever it is. And I can practice self-empathy around that, even if I have to say, okay, well, I need to take a break so that I can have some more self-connection time so that I can understand where I'm coming from and like come back to this later. So does that make sense? I often feel like I'm rambling, so any feedback is good. Okay. I'm noticing that we have about 21 minutes left. And I kind of would like to just open it up to questions. And
I have a question.
Yeah.
And it's, I'm in social work, and sometimes I deal with clients that, and it's really the whole world in terms of every so often when you get down to the feeling and what's really bothering someone, and when you get to the request, it's, can't we make the world better? Well, that's a tough request.
It's not very specific. It's not very specific. So one way to potentially make that more helpful would be to make a request for more specificity in the way that they would like to make the world better. What can we do? Where do we have power and where do we have influence? And what are we willing to do about those things? Because yes, it can definitely feel very overwhelming, especially when our focus is, I just want a different world. I would like for us to start over and I would like to be in charge of designing it myself, right? So there are lots of different ways that we can kind of play with requests and be really gentle with the fact that honestly it feels like, so this is a thought, it feels like our world is falling apart a lot. And for a lot of people, it's felt like that for a lot longer than it has for other people. So, and even now, it feels more like that for different people than others. So, trying to practice some self-empathy and playfulness around like, yes, if I could make the world, or if I could do anything in the world, this is what I would do. So that's part of where also art can be a really helpful piece of like, okay, we can actually get into maybe doing some storytelling, but also we can get into activism, can get into showing up differently. We can be really gentle and hold ourselves with a lot of compassion and care. And we can just get mad, honestly, like we can get and be mad about the way that things are and the way that our needs are not being met and the needs of other people are not being met. And that doesn't have to be dangerous. It can be really effective and cathartic. So did that respond well to your question, Andy?
Somewhat. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of how to apply. I work with young adult homeless young men, and you know, they're really, they're at the bottom of everyone.
Yeah.
I guess I would like for you to expand on, you said earlier, how can I practice care of myself when no one else seems to care about my needs?
I couldn't hear that.
I said, how can I practice care of myself when no one else seems to care about my needs?
This is one that I also continue to struggle with. in part because culturally we have this story or this this belief, this cultural belief that me having needs makes me a burden, and that I'm not worthy of having my needs met, or of having people even care about them. So there's a couple of different things that might be effective, and let me know if any of these just reek of bullshit. So one is to actively seek out people who do care about your needs, and to focus time with them and to make requests of them to like listen and care about you. Because that just the experience of mattering to someone, even if it's not the person that you wish that you mattered to, is empowering. Or at least it like can fill you up a bit. And also taking time to matter to yourself, like to be actively concerned and like deliberately focused on my needs matter, and I'm going to do what I need to do, and I'm going to make requests of myself exclusively to meet my needs, because for whatever reason, I don't trust that my needs matter to other people. And also checking whether or not and to what extent that is true. That because we can sometimes have a story in our mind that our needs don't matter to people, and sometimes that's less true than it would seem in our mind, because they don't know what our needs are, or they're not sure what they can do to demonstrate that they care. But in other circumstances, like there are just going to be some people and potentially whole groups of people that that we might just avoid, you know, because they don't care. And it's not in our best interest to continue to expect that from them. And then we can grieve for that and be mad about it and take care of that need for ourselves. So there's a number of different ways, like advocating and being mindful about how we advocate in a way that doesn't activate defensiveness and pushing back from them. But yeah, there's a lot of options with it. And I think a really, really good first step is always self-empathy. Like I need to know what I actually need and what I want. And then I can make an informed decision about whether it's likely that going to this person is going to help me or actually hurt more. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank
And
you.
I think the exercise also that you shared, Anthony, would be helpful in that respect, with us, you know, digging deeper into ourselves. And one of the ways that I deal with, you know, what Nicole is talking about is that I don't put other people in charge of my happiness. I take that on myself. I buy my own flowers, you know, like for years, you know, you wait for people to buy you flowers and all that kind of thing, and to do things for your birthday and to celebrate. I don't let anybody have that. You know, I don't give that away, because people will handle it how they want. And I even talk to people like, you know, sometimes they'll give you gifts, right? And I'm very specific with people about things that I don't want, because what am I going to do with it, right? You know, and then when you give it to somebody else or re-gift it or whatever, and I tell people, I was like, yeah, don't buy me that, because you don't know what I like. So let me do that part. But I think that's one of the ways that, like your the display where you identify what it is that you need and that kind of thing. And I just kind of do my self-affirmation all the time to say, you know, I know that my soul needs beauty as well as bread, right? So it's not just enough for me to have, you know, something to eat. I mean, I need something pretty to look at or some color or something. But I do that for myself because I just found people are inadequate to meet that need, especially when you can't communicate it exactly. I mean, I know how to still go to the store and get it, but they don't know really how to meet that need for me, even if they want to. And I just think sometimes people are so busy or self-absorbed that they really don't look into what other people need, right? So, and I don't, you know, I don't fault them for that, but I'm not going to go without because they can't figure it out either, right? So,
especially because they can't read my mind,
right?
And so I'm like, oh gosh, if I actually really want something specific, I have to ask for it, and often I forget that, and I'm like, well, why didn't you know that this is what I wanted? They're like, well, because you didn't tell me. And
so if we write those lists like you showed us, then we can actually be asking them for it. We may not get it, but at least we can ask and verbalize it. And then if they don't get it to us, then we go and spend, you know, if you're a spouse, you know, you spend their money and get it.
There are lots of requests that you can make of yourself.
Yes, and I try to make them all.
Yeah.
Anthony?
Yes.
I was just thinking also, one of the other factors to what is being said is that we don't always know what we need, and sometimes we don't know what we want. So when you find yourself in a situation, I'll just say, like, as a woman, a lot of times people say, well, what's going on with you? Why are you crying? And you can't really say why you're crying. It could be that you might be, it might be a certain time of the month that you're struggling with, or someone said something and you didn't really understand. But when you try to ask, when you try to share information, it was more like they felt you were defending yourself as opposed to allowing you to be able to share what your thoughts were. It's not that you meant any, you know, person any harm. And sometimes I've also see that, Raj, I'm going to use you as an example because you antagonized Anthony just for a short period when you first got on. But I just want to say that because sometimes when you don't know people, you don't know that people are joking, or their sarcasm can be hurtful. I'm not saying that his was, I just use it as an example because you're thinking that people may be on the same track that you are, but there are some people that they're not sarcastic, they don't joke, they're just straightforward, and they don't do that, where you may have other people, that's their language, that's how they speak, they don't mean any harm. It's kind of their way of letting you know that they have some type of, I would say, love. I don't mean it in the real word love, but I like you. And that's why I talk to you like that. It's not that I'm trying to make you feel bad or look bad in the eyes of others. So sometimes it's hard to articulate how you feel. And then when people accuse you of, you don't love me, you don't like me, you don't care, but they don't allow you to be able to say that, like, well, is it something that I did to offend you? Instead of making judgmental calls and saying, well, you don't like me, you don't care, because if you did, you wouldn't do that. Well, most people, I don't believe that most people really set out to try to hurt people's feelings. I know some people do. I'm just saying that when I look at the people that are on this webinar, I wouldn't see it as being intentional. So thanks for sharing the exercise, because it will definitely help you, do a check in your own spirit and be able to say, you know what, I messed up. I just have to get better. But everybody don't necessarily have this tool to work from.
So thank you, Anthony. I think we have about 7 minutes left before the end of the call. So maybe we can wrap up, and I think they have a few more things they want to say. So thank you.
I want to leave just with one kind of parting thought. which is kind of this general assumption or a kind of core belief of nonviolent communication, is that everything that human beings do is an attempt to meet a need. Every single thing. And sometimes those things, the strategies in the language of NVC, those things really suck at meeting a lot of people's needs. And so the intention behind my sharing this with you, and I'm very grateful to have had an opportunity to do that, is to make an invitation to consider what those needs are in any situation. So if I've sparked that little bit of curiosity and compassion for yourself, and also compassion for people in your life that have less power than you, or that have more power than you, and you are in a place where you can empathize with them, then I feel like this has been a success. So thank you again all for being here. And now I'm going to turn it over to, I think, Nicole, maybe, for closing. And I can also, I think I can share my LinkedIn information if anybody would like to get in touch. And I'll do that in the chat.
Thank you.
Take it away, Minister Jacqueline.
Well, Anthony, we would like to just thank you for being here with us today.
Definitely, very good.
Yes. So I'm not sure if I'm at liberty. No, maybe I shouldn't say it. Well, I'll just get a spanking. I'm not concerned about that. I already asked Anthony to come back next year to give us a part 2 to this. So I just want to let you all know that. Anthony, want to thank you for just doing this today, spending this time with us. Is really, really helpful. So we'll be definitely looking. I'm not sure if the videos are part of the.
I can send all of those.
Yeah, that would be really great, because then that way we can breathe and really, really do it. And if we need it at another time,
for sure,
definitely use it as a resource. So I would like to thank our CRM committee members, those who participated, the board members, everyone that's on the webinar, sharing your precious time with us. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Brenda, our president.
I just want to say thank you all for participating in this conversation. Thank you, Anthony. It was great conversation. And I know this is something we can all use in our work for mediation, as well as just in our personal lives. So the nonviolent communication was a really good message. Thank you so much. And for those of you who are on the call, please feel free to give us feedback on how these webinars are helping you, or any feedback that you might have for us, because that helps us to make it better for you, and to make it something useful that you can use in your work and even in your personal life. I've enjoyed the stories and participating, and thank you, Steve. Steve was my buddy, my partner in the storytelling. So thank you so much.
And so that concludes it, and we'll be dropping in a survey before we close out the Zoom link for you to fill out. Just fill that out, and look forward to seeing you next webinar. Have a good day, guys.
And don't forget to get the certificate. It's in the link. So we're not going to close out right now. You can still fill out the survey, do the information that's needed.
Thanks, everybody.
The survey and the certificate are both in the chat.
Mm-hmm. And I'll stay on for another few minutes too, in case anybody does have questions.